So you've written a story, or maybe even a book, and you're finished with it, it's done, you're still at the point where you can stand to read it, and now you need to give it a title. Okay, simple enough, just needs to be something that represents the story properly. It sounds attractive enough for a potential reader, hasn't been used by a famous book before, it isn't too long but isn't too short, and fits your genre perfectly. Simple. I find coming up with a title that I really like and that actually fits my story one of the hardest parts of writing, but I have developed a couple of approaches to it. So I want to give you a few things to think about and a few methods to help you find a title for your story, no matter what kind of story or genre that you write in. I want to get you one step closer to finding a title that you really love and that does your story justice. We'll also take a look at some different books in different genres and figure out what makes their titles good. So let's get started. So the reason titles are on my mind at the moment is because I'm writing another novella in Flash, which I talked about in my last video. What I didn't mention is that this time around I'm individually titling all the stories that make up that novella. So essentially every 1,000 words or so I'm having to stop and give a story a title. Dawns on me now I might be writing a collection and not a novella. But they are all individually linked to make up one big story, so it's a novella. Probably. Anyway, I've been fairly productive in coming up with these titles because I'm using a particular approach and it's something that any writer can do. This approach is my first suggestion for coming up with a title and it's something that you can always try on for size and see if you can get it to work. So have you ever written a sentence or a phrase within your writing and then sat back and thought, I really like that actually, that kind of represents everything that I've been writing about and just sounds better than all of the other sentences on this page? I think it's a fairly common approach to just take something that symbolises your story as a whole or just something that sounds really nice that you've written and make that the title. I'd always suggest if something jumps out at you like that and you think that's a line I want to remember, make it the title of your story or your book. That would be my first suggestion. If you've got that favourite line or that favourite phrase, create a cover with that and just look at it and see if it works for you. And if you don't have a favourite line or a favourite turn of phrase within your story, then you're not appreciating your own writing enough. Whatever stage you're at in your writing development, whether you're brand new or you're more experienced, go back through and find your favourite line. There will be something there that you're proud of, or there should be something there that you're proud of. Whether you're writing your first story ever or your 1,000th story, compliment yourself. It's not arrogance, it's just self-support. Don't be too critical. You should always be the first person that loves your story, even if it isn't perfect. Choosing a title using the favourite line works especially well when you're writing more literary type of stuff. Like that tends to be what mine is. It's kind of half literary and half another genre, so usually crime in my case. But if that doesn't work for you and you don't want to do that, what other options are there for coming up with a title? Let's have a look at a few different books from a few different genres and see what their titles tell us about them. Kind of reverse engineer the titles a little bit, I suppose. Something I'd never really noticed before is that titles and book covers sort of do the same thing. They're both the element of the book that makes an impact on a potential reader first, the thing that you notice first when you're looking at a new book, just presented slightly differently. A title can't catch your eye in quite the same way as a cover does, but a cover can't catch your ear in the same way that a title does. They're the thing that's out front selling the book first, before the reviews, before the content itself, before the blurb. They're what makes impact on a potential reader first. They're the bait that draws readers in, so they'd better be tasty, I suppose. With that being said, let's have a look at some books. The first one I want to talk about, I don't actually have in the house right now, but Past Me had it, so I'll put some footage of Past Me talking about this book up now. It's a thriller. I've talked about this book before. It's 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton. I think when I last spoke about it, I was talking about the opening and how it's quite literary for a thriller. But anyway, about the title. 3 Hours. It's called that because the plot covers a period of 3 hours. It's fast-paced, it's immediate, it wants to get down to business, fast. The title sets up the reader for a hard-hitting story, in my opinion. You wouldn't read that title necessarily and expect long passages musing upon the nature of humanity. It suggests that something's going to happen, it's going to take 3 hours, the pace is going to be fast, and so is the tension and probably the stakes. So what seems like a really simple 2-word title actually tells us quite a fair bit about the story. And that's useful for us to think about when we're titling our own stories, because What your story is called actually sets your readers' expectations and lets them know what kind of story they're about to step into. Some stories are thinkers, some aren't, but they all have layers of meaning, so it's important to take a bit of time to think about what you really want to say with your title. If you were getting on a flight, remember those, and you picked up 3 hours in the airport bookshop or whatever, and you read that title, you would hardly expect a post-apocalyptic sci-fi dinosaur story that spans 4 generations. You're expecting a fast-paced thriller, and that's exactly what you get. Use words with a lot of consonants in them, and mention things that are hard or sharp or fast or tough instead of things that are slow or soft or light. Those kind of words would probably lend themselves better to a story that's more literary, something that's more lyrical and more poetic, the kind of story that's more interested in making you think about the nature of the universe than just entertaining you and keeping you glued to the pages for a few hours. Something like this. Spill, Simmer, Falter, Wither. I love this title, firstly because of how cleverly it obviously mirrors the seasons, spring, summer, autumn or fall and winter, but also because it brings to mind all of the stuff that I think about when I think about literary fiction and what literary fiction deals with. So rises and falls, life and death, all of that good stuff. If you've never read it, by the way, then Spill, Simmer, Falter, Wither carries every bit as much impact as 3 hours does, but it just delivers it in a totally different way. And I picked up this book, I became interested in this book because of its title. Also, the cover has got a doggo on it. While we're talking about literary fiction, this next one is a great example of how a title can tell you exactly what to expect within a story. So, it's a collection of short stories by Raymond Chandler. I really love all of his short stories. They deal with all of the ups and downs and little patterns and repetitions and the nature of our tiny, inconsequential little lives. The title of the collection is What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. I think it's fair to say you wouldn't read that title and expect a fast-paced sci-fi novel. It's clearly going to be literary. The title itself is almost repetitive and reflective, which is exactly the kind of subject matter that Raymond Chandler usually deals with his short stories. It's usually about people repeating mistakes, trying to find their way through lives, never really being able to put their finger on what it is that they want or need, or being able to communicate with people around them. They're really great stories. It's a title that's also a concept, really, and it's the kind of literary fiction, the kind of short stories that I could read and read and read. And I do. I feel like I could go into a lot more detail about a lot more books here, but the video would be 3 hours long, so I'll just go through a few more quick examples. For the horror genre, how about a title that brings to mind murder and death and vulnerability, and also something else that's odd and creepy that you can't really quite put your finger on? Probably my favourite horror book, Silence of the Lambs. The reason that's such a good title, in my opinion, is because it's about a reason and not a cause. It's the unknown that's scary about it. Why are the lambs silent? What silenced them? If this book was just called Somebody Killed All the Lambs, then it wouldn't be scary, because the unknown would be known. It's sort of like how you're watching a scary film and everything's pretty tense up until the point where they show the monster, and then it's not scary anymore. Maybe if you are writing a horror book, it might be a good idea not to show the monster in the title. Hint at it subtly if you want, but let the reader know it's lurking in there somewhere, it's waiting for them somewhere down the line. To me, that's a lot more scary. I talked about Raymond Chandler, but speaking of other Raymonds whose writing I really love, there is another one. I talked about him before in a video just up here. It's Raymond Chandler. He's known for his hard-boiled, witty and intelligent detective stories, my favourite of which is The Big Sleep. It's stylish, it's brief, and it shoots straight. It matches the offhand approach of its main character towards something as trifling as death and murder. Like all the previous examples that I mentioned, this title epitomises what the story is all about, and it grabs the reader's interest. Each of these titles has been considered and thought about and debated and pondered by their authors, or at least I'd be really surprised if that wasn't the case. Far more went into their choosing than just, yeah, well, that sounds okay. I've given plenty of titles to plenty of stories and novels that I've written, and at the time I thought, yeah, that's a decent title. Now, not so much. Some of them I really did think about, and I tried to find a good title and I just couldn't. Others I just didn't give much thought, and something occurred to me and I thought, yeah, that'll do fine, that'll work for it, why not? But it's such a shame to spend all of that time writing what you hope to be a perfect story to just title it something, whatever. You've worked far too hard on a story to just give it a title that doesn't contribute anything towards that story. Find a title that emphasises the heart of your story and what you want to accomplish from it. Whether that's to move somebody or scare the out of them, whatever your aim is, write a title that sells your story. So what am I going to call this brand new novella in Flash that I'm writing? I don't know yet. The story's not finished. I don't fully understand the heart of the story, so I can't give it a title right now. But when it is finished, I'm going to spend a good long time finding something that complements everything I'm trying to do with it. I'm going to take some time to give it a title that really does it justice. If you're interested in any of the books that I talked about in this video, and I'd recommend all of them to be honest, then I'll link them in the description down below. Also linked down there is my website, where I have details of my flash fiction course and my other services that I offer writers. And if you want to join a friendly community for writers where we talk about writing and we discuss work and all that sort of stuff, feel free to join our community Discord server. Guess where the link for that is? It's up there. Not really, it's also in the description. Let me know what you thought of this video. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.